In the matter of the people of the state of California versus Orenthal James Simpson, case number BA096.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask
And
what
boom,
you can
Taylor,
do
we
for
are
your
live,
country.
active, and healthy and happy. How are you?
I'm not very healthy and I'm kind of grumpy, but I'm
Are you
alive.
active?
No,
Okay,
not
so
not at all. So speak for yourself, farmers.
I was told that I came off as super low energy on the Monday episode.
Really?
And yeah, I didn't realize that. And so I'm going to be as high energy as I can be.
Oh
So
God.
this is going to
Great.
be a very exciting episode for you.
I really need that from now.
I
Isn't
know.
it my turn?
It is
It's
your
my
turn.
Okay, great.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
So I get to just be a casual observer with
great.
high
Uh,
energy.
But I need you. You can make some faces at me that are like, hi, give me jazz hands every once in a while. I love it. Thank
I
you.
don't know what this is.
That's not a jazz hand, but it's close. Um, Hello, everyone. Welcome to Doomed to Fail. We are the podcast that brings you history's most notorious disasters and epic failures twice a week, every week. And I am Taylor, joined by Fars.
I'm here.
You know what I was thinking is one really, really big thing that we have right now, because we are not making any money off of this podcast, is that we don't have any ads. And I've been listening to other very popular podcasts. Like every fucking 5 minutes, there's an ad, and I want to murder someone. So you're welcome, everyone, for this
Okay.
adless episode.
Okay. I will say that as much as I enjoy um got Pod Save America,
Hmm.
man, they overdo it on the ads. Like
So
it is like
many.
it is constant. It's like
Constant.
and like right when you're in the when you're like really into it and like in the
Hmm.
zone and you're like, okay, I'm gonna listen to the podcast and hop in the shower. And then you're like scrubbing yourself and you're like, damn it, there's another episode. So there goes like the entire shower time that was gonna absorb their amazing commentary on American politics, and it's just gone.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
super
so
annoying.
you're welcome,
Exactly.
America.
Exactly.
Also, you're not getting
Um,
paid. I'm getting paid. I'm getting like $1,000 a month off this.
are you? Great, good for you.
It's a odd reveal,
It
odd
is an
time
odd
for a reveal.
reveal. I feel a little weird about it, but okay.
Jokes,
Um,
we're all joking.
yeah, and I said, I feel a little sickly today. I was traveling and it was hard. It's hard to get anywhere from here because I live in the middle of nowhere. And so, I don't know. I figured it'd be better just to take a one-way flight rather than get on one that has layovers. It's just like, do I want to do that or do I want to drive to Las Vegas? Like those are my options. And this time I drove to Las Vegas, but it's just hard to do that, especially by yourself. It's like a 3.5 hour drive through nowhere, you know? So it's boring.
Yeah,
I listened to the Song of Achilles, which was lovely, and I
I
cried.
don't know what
I
that
cried.
is.
It's a book by Madeline Miller. She's done a couple where she like um does like a deep dive into Greek myths, sort of. And that one and Circe, I cried a lot at the end of both of them, and they were very good. So
Beautiful.
yeah.
Sounds lovely.
Yeah,
And okay, so I think you are the first speaker of the day.
I am.
You speak first.
Are you ready?
I'm the captive audience.
Great.
Captivate me.
Um, okay. So I was in Chicago this week, like I just said, and I wanted to tell some Chicago stories, because I'm from there, sort of. I'm from a suburb of Chicago, and I lived there till I was 13. And I love it. I got there actually really early on Wednesday, like at like 5 p.m. So I was able to like walk around and like I walked to the lake and it's so pretty and there's like the streets are so wide, there are alleys, the buildings are like all old and pretty. There's roving gangs of drunk white women, like so many, it's so great. Like older white women with short hair carrying cases of Miller Lite just around.
I mean,
And
it
they're great.
sounds like every bachelorette party I see here in Austin.
Yeah, but they're like always, but they're older in Chicago.
Ah, okay.
You know what I mean? Like they're not like in their 20s, they're like in their 60s and they're great. And so there are a bunch of that. It rains there. And they're prepping for the DNC, obviously. So there's like DNC signs everywhere. There are volunteers at the airport, which like I love because that's something that I totally would have done is like been a volunteer to hold a sign at the airport, you know, when in my youth.
Yeah. I you know what? I'm not gonna go into that story. Go ahead.
Cool. Well, I would have done that. Um, and a lot of people who you could tell were going in there for the DNC who were like, you know, on their phones constantly because they think they're the most important person in the Democratic Party.
Of course. If you're a delegate, you are the
You
most important
can
person.
tell that they're on their phone being like, if I do not do this, the United States of America and democracy will fall apart, you know? Of
And
course it
I will
does.
say, I kind of love that energy
I do
because if
too.
you talk to them, like these are not like crazy high power people. These are like school teachers. These are like, you know what I mean? Like they're
Yeah, yeah,
they're
yeah.
just normal everyday people.
Or they're like a staffer of like a mid to low level
Like a
person who's a
who
staffer
gives a
for someone
shit
else, you know? Um,
representative. Yeah.
yeah, but I'm very happy for them, and I just want to tell them not to forget to drink water because I feel like they're probably going to be very stressed out this week.
I don't know.
Um,
It seems like it's gonna be like a celebration. I just
I think it'll be fun. I know that like some people I know are going to an event where Boys to Men are singing, which sounds amazing.
I think if Biden was still in and I was going to be a delegate, I would just be like, why am I here?
You'd be
I
more
would just be
stressed.
I'd be just drinking and just like get me out of this situation.
Yeah, but now it's gonna be fun.
Yeah, now it's gonna be fun.
Yeah, I agree. I also was like, I feel like every time I'm reading about Chicago, it's like there's a conventions. I looked it up. Chicago has hosted the most major party presidential nominating conventions of any city, 14 Republican and 11 Democratic. So, because I always feel like there's always something happening in Chicago. So,
Yeah, of course. It's
yeah,
great. I was in Chicago in October, like a year or two ago, and it was beautiful. I thought it was lovely.
yeah. So I definitely want to go back, take the kids, go to the museums, and very, very fun. So I'm going to tell you some Chicago stories. I'm going to tell you a disaster story in the middle of two ghost stories.
Okay, I'm not even gonna guess because that
They're
sounds
not.
like I would
They're not
never get it.
related. They're not
Great.
even related to each other.
Okay,
They're just stories my dad has told me. So
got
like
it.
the ghost stories are not true. The stories my dad has told me, but like the other part is true.
Dope.
Okay. So my Chicago has incredible buildings, as you know. One of them is the Hancock Tower. So it was named after the John Hancock Insurance Company, named after obviously the John Hancock of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. Um, they changed the name of the building to 875 North Michigan Avenue in 2018, which is stupid. That's just the address.
Oh,
What?
really? I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's dumb. So I guess you can't call it the Sears Tower, it's all the Tower. Like, who cares? Like, that's stupid. You can't change the name of buildings.
Wait, they
Um,
changed the Sears Tower?
to the Willis Tower a long time ago,
Okay,
like maybe 10 years ago.
the marketing sucked because I never knew that.
Yeah, no, that's dumb. Um, The Hancock Tower has businesses and restaurants, 700 condos. When it was built in 1968, it was the tallest residence in the world and and the second tallest building in the world, against the Empire State Building. It's now the 13th tallest building in the world. But it scares the shit out of me because of Poltergeist 3. Have you seen Poltergeist 3?
No.
So Poltergeist 1, obviously amazing. Poltergeist 2, it's actually so scary. I've only watched it once because there's like a really scary like cult leader, religious old man that like buries people alive, and I can't get over it. It scares me. Poltergeist 3 is in the Hancock Tower. So the little girl, it goes and visits her uncle, and just like a bunch of scary shit happens there, and it's really good. And I've seen it a couple times, and there's a lot of like mirrors involved and stuff, and like it's very, very scary. So also, this has nothing to do with my main story I'm telling you today, but did you know that the word poltergeist, I was like, what does that even mean? I know geist means ghost, but what does polter mean? Polter means to make a sound. So poltergeist is a ghost that makes a sound.
Okay.
I just didn't know that. I
I'm
don't know
glad we know that
if
now.
everybody knew that. So my dad had a friend who lived there in the 80s, and he had a condo and lived there. Everything was normal. One day, his sister knocks on the door and he's like, "Hey, like, what are you doing here?" She's like, "Oh, I just wanted to come in and like say hi and see how you're doing." So she comes in, they talk for a little bit, and she's like, I just want you to know that like I'm okay and that I'm happy and that please tell mom that I love her and that I'm totally fine." And he was like, "Okay." And she was like, "Okay, well, I'll see you." And she leaves. And then as soon as it closes the door, his phone rings and his mom calls and his sister had just died in a plane crash. It was a ghost.
Wait, your dad told you that story?
Yes, he told me his friend told me that story.
I see why you were into horror the way you're into horror now.
He told me that story when I was very, very young. I have no reason not to believe it. But anyway, isn't that exciting?
Yeah, it also sounds like
It's
I
all, it's my
heard
first
that.
ghost story.
I feel like I've also read that in like a Goosebumps story when I
Of
was like in
course,
eighth
you
grade.
have. Absolutely. Absolutely. That's the kind of story it is. It also happened definitely in the Haunting of Hill House show.
Yeah,
when
yeah, you're
like the
right.
sister
Yeah, yeah.
sister goes to the brother's house and she's
Yep.
been dead the whole time. Yeah. Spoiler alert for that old show. But okay, so that's my first ghost story. I'll tell you another one later. But let's talk about a disaster that happened in Chicago. I'm going to talk about the Hammond Circus train wreck of 1918.
Sweet.
Cool. It technically happened in Indiana. It happened in Hammond, Indiana, but the people who died in it are buried in the Woodlawn Cemetery in Forest Park, Illinois, which is near Chicago, which is also where my great 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 and grandparents are buried. So a lot of Styrics and the people who died in this train crash are in the Woodlawn Cemetery in Chicago. So, um, I'll start with the beginning about the circus. So, a man named Ben E. Wallace was born on October 4th, 1847 in Pennsylvania. He enlisted in the Civil War, but before he even got to do anything, it was over. He did get to keep the $250 that he got because someone had paid him to go in their place. So, he had a little bit of money and he was able to kind of go west and he ended up in Peru, Indiana. In Peru, Indiana. He got into horses and he owned a bunch of horses and ended up having one of the best stables in Indiana. So I don't know if he like breed if that what that means. You like breed horses, people can ride them, you sell them, you take care of horses. He was a horse guy. In 1882, he started to get interested in circuses because it was like a weird time to have circuses. Like there's no rules, you know. It's probably like half circus, half
Horrible.
freak show, half terrible with the animals, all the
It sounds
things.
awful. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, like totally unregulated
Yeah, the
entertainment.
worst part of human history,
Yeah.
yes. But we
Um,
created poor people with disfigurements and okay. Yeah.
yeah, and tons of animals and like, all the things. So the first thing he did is he bought several train cars full of stuff from another circus because there were like tons of like roaming circuses from another circus that had shut down called the W.C. Coop Show. And it was like full of weird stuff like costumes and tents and poles and like just like whatever shit you might need to start a circus. Then he started to buy more train cars and horses and other animals from a thing called Nathan and Company's Traveling Menagerie, which was like probably again wagons full of like monkeys,
Poor animals that just
poor
desperately
animals.
want freedom.
Yeah, it reminds me a little bit of um. There's like this Netflix show a long time ago that was like the Ballad of Buster Scruggs. Like that it had that one in it, a couple other ones, but one of them had like a weird traveling like freak show, and it was very uncomfortable. Um, So he has all these animals, he has the tents, and he gets performers, and then he has some like weird ass train cars made, which are like really ornate, and I'll share pictures of them, but they have like carvings of animals on the sides, because like you would know when the circus train was like coming to town, and
Yeah,
you'd
of
be
course.
excited about it. And circus trains are still a thing. Another thing that my dad told me I'm pretty sure it's true. He used to be a cab driver in Las Vegas, and some guys, wanted to go back to where they were staying, and they were staying at the train yard on the circus train. Because, like, how else would you get animals around the country? You know,
Are
makes no
circuses even a
sense.
thing right now?
Well, I think like they were until very recently, if they aren't still. I think you can still go to a circus. It's not as like,
Yeah, I remember when I was a kid, like a very small kid, when Barnum and Bailey came to Dallas and
yeah,
we went to that. And I remember I thought it was incredible. And then you grow up and you learn about what they do to those poor elephants. You're like, this is horrible. And then I saw Dumbo and was like, we can't do this anymore,
yeah.
people.
It's a lot like Dumbo. That is
Yeah.
the time period that we're in. That's exactly right. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So Wallace partnered with a man named James Anderson, who he eventually bought out, and his circus toured Indiana, Kentucky, and Virginia and called it a world tour, which is fun. You know,
Yeah, might as well.
it was a little circle. Um, it was called Wallace and Company's Great World Menagerie, Grand International Mardi Gras, Highway Holiday Hildago, and the Alliance of Novelties. And they changed that to the Great Wallace Shows because that was too long, obviously. That was a
Right.
lot of names. And eventually, so it's the Great Wallace shows, and there's, dogs, there's clowns, there's acrobats, there's elephants, there's zebras, there's like all sorts of shit that you'd expect at a circus in the late 1800s. In 1892, he bought a 220-acre farm from the son of a Miami war chief named Gabriel Godfroy. And he called it the winter quarters because they couldn't like, Indiana. Kentucky and Virginia get really cold, so you can't like ride the train around all year long. So during the winter, they would just kind of like hunker down at this space, and they would have a bunch of like barns and like places where they would take care of the animals. There was a elephant barn, a foundry where they would make like horseshoes and stuff, like an ironworks. And then it said there was a cat barn, which like I laughed at for 5 minutes, and then I thought maybe they mean lions, not just like cats.
They definitely mean lines. I'm actually,
You know?
it's funny because you mentioned like how long the name was, and I just realized the name is actually Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus. And it's like that is
Yeah.
a really long name. And then if you're on their Wikipedia page, the first picture that comes up, or not like one of the first ones that comes up, is this guy standing in front of five what has to be like 800-pound tigers. And I'm like,
hmm
so horrible that we did
Imagine
this.
those guys in like a barn in Indiana, you know? And the Ringling Brothers, Barnum and Bailey will eventually buy the Great Wallace shows, so there could have been Wallace's tigers that are in there, you know?
Can I just say that my hot take is every time a tiger or a lion attacks a tamer at a circus, I kind of get happy and excited.
I do want to talk about Siegfried and Roy sometime because I think that tiger was trying to protect him. I don't
I don't know the
think they were gonna attack.
circumstances. I would assume that a place like an operation like Siegfried and Roy is different than like taking tigers and throwing them on a fucking freight
Yes, it's a
train and
different
just
time.
like
And it's like 100 years later.
it's 100 years later and like there's PETA, there's ASPCA, there's like a whole
Yeah, yeah,
host
yeah.
of regular like I assume those tigers actually lived like a pretty decent life. But like in
I
the
think
olden
that's
times, I think yes, I would rather them be
yes.
killed. The
No,
people be killed.
absolutely. No, I totally. So they have that place where they hang out during the winter. In 1892, they also had their first train wreck. And in that wreck, 26 horses were killed, which was a cost about $5,000 to replace them and like retrain them. So they had a couple a couple things happen, before the big one that we're going to talk about. So there was that one in 1892. In 1903, there was another train wreck. So by this time, the train is in like two sections. And the first train was in Durand, Michigan, which is where they were headed as expected. And the second train was coming up to them and they did not slow down. So it slammed into the first section of the circus train, killing 26 men of the circus and an unknown number of railroad employees and some animals. The driver of the second train said that the brakes were broken, but they weren't. He had just, for whatever reason, not stopped in time. This is the second worst train wreck ever for a circus, and I feel like now you know that I'm going to tell you about the first worst train wreck for a circus in a second.
Right. This is
But that
the
one happened first.
this is the appetizer
Yeah. And then
train wreck.
something also about like, so yeah, the animals are like obviously being treated like not great and all the things, but the people are also like people who are going to like hop on and off trains, like they're heading west and they're going to work for the circus for, I don't know, a month and just like take care of the horses or something. So there's people who are like coming in and out all the time. So there's never like an exact number of people. It's not like they have like a complicated like workplace system, you
Yeah,
know?
they don't have like an HR management software. There's no
Yes,
OSHA in place that's like making
exactly.
sure that or did you hop on the train while it was moving or not? It's like who gives a
Yeah.
shit?
Yeah. So
Missing
like,
your arm, it's fine. Keep doing your job.
oh, you got bit by a lion?
You were
Whatever.
insane. Humans were insane in the early days.
So in 1907, Wallace bought the Carl Hagenbeck Circus, and he calls the circus the Hagenbeck-Wallace Circus from now on. Carl Hagenbeck didn't like this. He tried to sue him and have him stop using his name, but people had like the Hagenbeck Circus had been pretty popular, and for doing things like it didn't really move. You would observe animals like in a more natural setting than like in a cage, like in The Last Unicorn. And so he was kind of mad about it, but he lost the suit and his name was still going to be in it. So now the Wallace Circus, the Hagenbeck-Wallace Circus is huge. It is traveling on two trains, and each train is at least 28 cars. So it's really big.
Yeah.
Um, and I have some pictures. I read like a part of a book. I didn't realize that I was like, this book stops in a really weird place, but like I only had half of it, and I was like, well, it's too late to figure out how to read the rest of this book. So, but it has some pictures of it of like the circus going through town when it gets there with like a parade with like zebras in it and stuff, which is fun and to be fun to see if you were a child in the 1880s,
Right.
you know.
I'm
Um,
sure. I'm sure that experience didn't teach those kids how to treat other people in a subjugated way.
yes, exactly. They just saw zebras and they're fine.
Right.
Okay. So it's huge. They have a lot of animals and a lot of people working for them. In the spring of 1913, there was a huge flood in Indiana. So they're actually in the winter quarters, which is the big plot of land that Wallace had purchased. And a lot of warm rain fell on snow, which caused a lot of flooding. And the winter quarters were flooded, and there was $150,000 in damages. 8 elephants died. One elephant was found a few miles down the river, like it floated down the river, it drowned. In the end, 8 elephants, 21 lions and tigers, and 8 horses all died in that flood. So they had, their share of disasters like leading up to big one. In 1913, and the Wallace sold the circus to a man named Ed Ballard. So he didn't run it anymore. Another man did. Um, he kept the land in Indiana, the winter quarters, until 1921, and eventually Ringling Brothers would buy it, and they kept the land as a place to burn old circus wagons, which is a weird thing to need to do.
Yeah.
But it was like
Gotta
the
decommission
Ringling
somehow, I
Brothers,
guess.
yeah, decommissioned place. And now it is the spot of the Circus Hall of Fame is in Peru, Indiana, on the land that Wallace had bought for the winter quarters. And you can go there today if you want to.
I'm sure it'd be a good learning experience.
Yeah. So it's 1913. It belongs to Ed Ballard, and it's getting very popular. So it's getting more and more popular. The circus itself is still called, it's still going to be called the Hagenbeck-wallace Circus. And in 1918, it is headed into Indiana for a show. And so what into Hammond, Indiana for a show. I want to get the name of the town. So the train is in 2 parts, as usual, traveling through Indiana. The first part of the train stops for maintenance just before 4 a.m. And the second part of the train is kind of slowing down after it. The second part has all of the people in it. I think the first part has like more of the animals and like the equipment and stuff. So there was another train, a third train behind them. It was a Michigan Central Railroad troop train, which is a military train to like move people in the military, but it was empty. And there was a man named Alonzo Sargent, and he was the conductor of the engineer or whatever you call it of that train. And he fell asleep. And his thing was like, I ate a lot of food the day before. The train is very like relaxing, the way it like lulls you to sleep, and I was tired and he fell asleep. I'm also sure that he was probably drunk.
Also, that is true. A train does lull you to sleep.
Yeah. But like if it's your job to stay awake, you can't fall asleep.
I fell asleep on a train, but it was not my job to conduct it.
Exactly. So who cares? So he missed several flags and several alarms to tell him to stop, to slow down, but he didn't slow down. And his train hit the second train full of people at 35 miles an hour at 4 a.m. on June 22nd, 1918. Eventually, Alonzo Sargent and the person that was also working with him on the train their case will be thrown out after a mistrial and he'll never be charged for it. But like everybody agrees that it was his fault. And he even said, like, I fell asleep. Like that's what happened, you know? So people probably died initially when they got hit because they were all sleeping. Remember, it's 4 a.m. So the train got hit and all the sleeping cars like tipped over and the people were crushed. But really, the big thing that happened is the sleeping cars had kerosene lamps in them and they immediately caught on fire.
Right.
So in the fire, 86 people died. Many of them were burned beyond recognition. Only 5 of them were ever identified of the people that died. So they were circus performers, circus workers. They were, transient people who were like jumping in on and off to like help out for a couple days. And among the dead were these two guys named Arthur and Max. They were the Great Dare Kicks brothers. They were a strongman act, and Jenny Ward Todd of the Flying Wards, so an acrobat and strongman. They know those people died. Um, they are all buried in Woodlawn Cemetery in Forest Park, Illinois, the one where that my ancestors are buried in as well, in a place called the Showman's Rest. So because they couldn't identify them, some of them are buried in a in a mass grave. Some of the other ones are in individual plots called unknown male or unknown female. One grave is marked Smiley and one is marked Baldy. So just like circus people. And one is a four-horse driver. So just like we knew this guy was a driver somehow, but we don't know his name, you know?
Yeah,
Uh,
no human resources whatsoever.
yeah, yeah. They were buried 5 days after the crash. So Showman's Rest at Woodlawn Cemetery is not the only Showman's Rest in America. Like it's a place specifically for like circus traveling performers. It was actually bought by Buffalo Bill Cody and the Showmen's League of America a couple years before this, as a place to bury like circus performers and traveling performers because they don't necessarily have a home, you know,
Okay, yeah,
that
I
can be
guess that
buried.
makes sense.
Um, Around Showman's Rest, there are four elephant statues, but there are no animals buried there. I'm sure animals died in the crash, but no animals are buried there. People would say that they can hear the lions and the elephants screaming in the middle of the night, but they probably can because it's also next to a zoo. So it's probably the zoo animals, like roaring in the middle of the night, you know,
Yeah.
which would still be scary as shit if you're in a cemetery where circus people are buried.
Yeah, it's all just bad.
Yeah.
It's all creepy.
So only two performances of the circus were canceled. The one in Hammond and then another one, and then the Ringling Brothers, Barnum and Bailey lent them performers and equipment so that they could keep going. So by the 1930s, though, the show had been sold to Barnum and Bailey, Ringling Brothers, and eventually, they would kind of be sold for parts during the Great Depression. There'll still be a little bit of it because obviously it's like still exists, but this was like a bad time for it. So that was kind of like in the aftermath of this, things got like, kind of sold for parts in during the Depression. Um, and that's it.
Is the is
Not a long
the
story.
is the sounds in the graveyard the ghost story part of this?
No, I have another one.
Whoa. Okay.
Did you have any questions about the circus train?
No, this here's what's interesting is like that actually like no part of that is really that surprising because
Yeah.
I still remember when I want to say it was like 2006, 2008, whatever it was in the DC metro area when the two metro cars collided and
Mm.
that was like just computer failure, right? Like it was like
Yeah.
a relay switch didn't flip when it should have because of disrepair and a
Hmm.
bunch of people died. They call it telescoping, which
Oh,
I remember.
because you know what it reminds me of is you remember in the Society of the Snow movie when the plane crashes and the front of the plane, everybody gets smushed together
Yep.
and it's like legs breaking and like bones cracking and this is like terrible.
So that it's so weird you said that because I literally just like 2 days ago re-listened to the episode on last podcast about that. But actually,
Hmm.
that's not what telescoping is. What telescoping actually is with trains is when a train rear ends at full speed another train. One train goes inside the other train.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Oh God.
Really bad because again like the forces you're dealing with are just like 35
Hmm.
miles per hour not that big of a deal like most people would survive a
Hmm.
35-mile-per-hour car accident but if a train hit you at 35 miles per hour vastly
Yeah.
different outcomes.
It's just like big and heavy. My uncle worked on he was a lawyer and he said that when I moved to LA, he called me and he was like, "Don't go on the subway in LA. It's not safe." And I was like, "I have to, but thank you for your concern." But he was like, "Something's gonna go wrong. Like something bad's gonna happen." Because he said he like worked on it and he like it's not great. I was like, "I don't know what am I gonna do."
I mean it's all risk. It's funny because
Yeah.
I felt the same way when I was in New York City and was like I don't want to be here like there's something really weird about being this underground all these giant
Hmm.
buildings and people above us like I don't know it just feels really creepy.
That's interesting. I feel like I never thought about the buildings on top of me, and I would have freaked out.
What's that one part of the ride? I think so. When I was there for the U.S. Open, when you come from Meadowlands back into Manhattan,
Hmm.
it gets super hot, and then you're like,
Mm.
somebody explained to me that oh, we're going super deep because we're going under the
River.
water river.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
it's so scary. Is
I
that
know.
scary? It's
No,
so
that is so
terrifying.
scary. I don't like being like, do you remember that movie, that like stupid movie with Sylvester Stallone
Don't
about the
ever call it a
tunnel?
stupid movie. But yes, go ahead.
It's stupid about the tunnel when like the Holland Tunnel collapses in New York.
No,
It's like Sylvester Stallone and like I think
I don't know this
um
one.
um tunnel movie Daylight and from 1996. It's him and Viggo Mortensen is in it. And then a couple other I don't know the only person I know from this, but it's where like the Holland Tunnel collapses while they're in it and they have to like get out and like you said it's like getting hotter and like the it starts leaking water and it's a very very scary and I get scared when I'm in those big tunnels under the water. I don't love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not a big fan. Your story also reminded me that I spent a weird amount of time researching the Cove. Remember the Cove?
Hmm. The dolphin movie?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and it just reminded me of like, man, we are so far from where we were as humans in terms of how we treat animals. Like God, thank God we like are. I mean, hopefully we keep progressing on that track, but like this
Yeah.
sort of stuff really, really like it upsets me.
Yeah, no, I think that we will. I remember I was at the Colosseum in Rome and like one of the people I was with, she was like, "Can you believe how many animals died here and how sad that is?" And another person was like, "People died here." And then they both like really mad at each other. It was so funny. And I was like, "Okay, guys, I don't
I'm
care."
always so me and you disagree on this. I
Yeah.
always come down on the side of the animal
Yeah.
because the people can kind of understand the paradigms of society that are constructed around them. Whereas like a baboon you kidnap from like Africa and stuff into a cage to like do tricks has no concept of what it got itself into. It didn't get itself into anything. It just happened to it.
I mean, I kind of feel bad for a Christian who's eaten by a lion
What did the
in
Christian do to get eaten by the lion?
probably something annoying.
Yeah,
But
it was probably like just trying to convert children. You're like, leave the children alone. Just live your life.
maybe on that side, I'm pro
Pro
animal.
Christians.
No,
Oh
I'm
yeah.
not pro Christian, so maybe I'm pro animal in that
Well,
in
there you
that one.
go.
You found
There
it.
you go.
That's my one. Okay, I have one more ghost story.
Let's hear it.
So, um, it's told differently by my father and by the internet, but it's the same story that you hear about like a woman dressed in white on the side of the freeway,
Oh yeah.
or the side of the street. So, in since the 1930s, there is a ghost named Resurrection Mary, and her story is that she would find a man at a dance hall. The old Willowbrook Ballroom in Chicago was one of the ones, and they would dance all night, and then she would ask for a ride home. And while they're stopped next to the Resurrection Cemetery, she would jump out of the car and run into the cemetery and disappear. And he would like never see her again. Some say that she was a girl named Mary Bregovy who died in a car crash in 1934. There's also a woman named Anna Marja Norkus who died in a car accident while returning from a dance in 1927. So like maybe it's some of them, and they see her on the road or like clutching the gates of the cemetery as you drive by in the middle of the night, which like I hate that. Like those ghost stories where it's like all of a sudden there's like a woman in the back of your car or like on
Ugh.
like a dark road, or like you see one and you drive past her and then you like look in your rearview mirror and she's not there, you know, like that. The way that my dad told that same story was it was the Melody Mill Ballroom and it was Woodlawn Cemetery, the one where the circus people are buried. But in that story, the girl is actually the daughter of the caretaker of the cemetery, and that explains why she runs in there.
All right. Well, that explains it. Hey, you
Never
brought
mind.
up House on Haunted Hill or
Hmm.
Haunting of Blind
Haunting
Hill,
of Hill House, the TV show. Yeah. I think
the
there's so
one that was
many.
on Netflix.
Yeah, yeah.
Which one was that one?
That was a haunting, the Haunting of Hill House
Hill
TV
House. Yeah,
show.
yeah, that's what it
Yeah,
was.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, yeah. Blythe House came after that. Never mind. Okay, yeah. So in that one, the part of it that is like embedded in my brain is when the two siblings are driving. It's like the middle of the day, so you don't
Oh my
expect anything
God.
to happen. Yeah, exactly. Everybody knows exactly what I'm talking about. And then they look in the rearview mirror, and that thing just pops out, and like if they drive into the ditch. That is still in my brain. Like I still remember that.
It was so scary. I read afterwards that like the two in the front didn't know when it was going to happen and she did it like early, you know? So like they were like genuinely fucking terrified.
It's because it was in the middle of the day, and you're like, "What's gonna happen?" Like all the creepy stuff just happened, and then the setup was like, you expect a lull in the creep factor, and then it
Hmm.
just popped down. You're like, "Oh my God!" I mean, that is, yeah, great show,
Yeah.
great show.
Great show. I watched it twice. Second time I fast forwarded through all of the like family drama. Like I don't care about the kid on drugs. I don't give
Yeah.
a shit. I don't give a
Yeah.
shit about like that one guy who like doesn't like his wife. I don't care. I want to see ghosts.
Taylor, so like here's why I suck at movies and why I can't watch movies anymore. It's because it's always predictable. It's like there's some protagonists, there's a what man or woman they're into, they do
Hmm.
their main quest, and the side quest is this love story. It's like, can we just like have movies be good? Like it just like cut out the not like we don't have to have like love stories in every
Yeah.
movie. I
Oh, I
wanted to go
totally
see
agree.
Twister this weekend or Twisters because I love the first Twister. It was
Hmm.
awesome. I saw it several times and I want to go see it. And I was like, you know what, man? Like, there's gonna be at least 30, 40 minutes of filler in this where it's just gonna be like some side plot love quest that we gotta like I gotta like sit
Totally
there and
right.
pretend like I give a shit about.
Yeah, no, that's stupid. I don't care. I don't want to see
Yeah.
that.
Have
Yeah,
empty lives,
totally agree.
people. It's better.
Yeah, I don't,
Um,
I want to talk about Twisters.
yes.
But I have read the original Haunting of Hill House book by Shirley Jackson several times, and it is good every single time.
I'm sure.
So,
I'm
yeah.
sure. Uh, sweet. Well, we learned a lot about circuses. We learned a lot about animal rights, which you didn't intend to teach us on, but here we are. So thank you for sharing.
You are welcome. Thank you for listening.
I've never seen any of the poltergeists.
What? No way.
Yeah.
Um, they are, I mean, the first Poltergeist is so good. You have to watch it. You have to watch it tonight. It's
And
great.
they remade it, didn't they? They
Yeah,
remade
but
it
that one's fine. But like the old one is the first, watch the original one with Coach. It's so good. And
with
there are
Coach.
like, you know, there are
It's Craig Nelson.
yeah, yeah. You knew who I meant. There
That
are
was a great
parts of
show.
it that are so like they're so scary that I get scared thinking about them like right now. And I watched it when I was like way too young to watch it. And I watched it in the past 5 years with Jay and Juan, and it's good every single time. There's like a part in it where you think you're done and you're not done. And every time I think, oh, the movie's over, and I'm like, it's so good.
Sweet. All right. Well,
Wonderful.
recommendation.
Um,
Cool. Do you have any listeners commentary?
I do. I have some stuff that my friend Morgan sent me in response to your episode. And hold on one second. I'm trying to find it in my text messages. But so she sent me a couple things to follow up. Wait, hold on. I was not ready for this, and I should have been. Oh, she said we need to make sure we're watching the Paralympics volleyball because they do it sitting down. So I definitely can't wait to do that. I'm not even sure that's happening yet, but I will watch it. Um, and so she also talked about, oh, she has something about Peter Thiel that I'll send you after your episode. It was with Pete Buttigieg talking about him. So I'll send that to you because I know you're going to continue to talk about PayPal. But the thing that she told me that is the worst thing I've ever heard in my whole entire life is that did you realize that the Tesla model numbers are the Tesla X, 3, X, and Y, which spell sexy?
Yeah.
Ew.
Yeah. So
I've never,
the
I just threw up in my mouth.
hold on. Yeah, because it was he was trying to do the Model E and then Ford filed an injunction because they created the Model E. Anyways, yeah, I knew that.
Ew. That's all.
It's not that big a deal.
It's something a
Um,
4-year-old would do, or like a 13-year-old. Anyway.
I mean,
Um,
I also ended the last episode by saying he literally went back and bought X.com, his company from when he was like 22. I mean, he does like holding on to things.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah.
um,
Cool.
well, thank you for sharing, Taylor, and thank you for writing in. And as always, please keep writing in at doomnflpod@gmail.com. Find us on the socials at doomnflpod, and let us know if y'all want me to keep restart doing the introductions instead of Taylor.
Please do let us know. We'd love to know. And we also want to remind you that we don't have commercials. So
So we're better than them.
come on, listen while there's no commercials.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we can always go back and put commercials in, but we're not
I
going to do
know
that yet.
we're not there yet.
We're
So
not there yet. We're
you
not
can
there.
listen to so many hours of us talking without being interrupted by someone telling you that your house is going to get robbed or whatever, or that like you're bad
Weird
at making
episodes.
dinner.
Um, Sweet. Well, thank you, Taylor. I'll join you
Thanks, Bryce.
again in a few days, and we'll go ahead and cut it off.